from preventing violence, Suhrawardi's administration created the perfect conditions for it.
वो पार्टीशन 1947 में शुरू हुआ था, वो आज तक चल रहा है और कभी खत्म ही नहीं होगा।
Massacre, it continued for 2 whole days.
कम्युनल पॉलिटिक्स से लड़ रहे हैं, क्या हम आजाद हैं?
Impact was that powerful.
It's an unfinished project.
What happens to a society when it has to depend on cinema to know its own history? You know, some stories just get buried. Some chapters of the history that we should remember, we just don't. Today is the 15th of September when I am recording this video. And it's probably mid-September or the end of September when you will be watching it, depending upon when it goes live. From the title and the thumbnail, you already know what this video is going to be about. But this video is going to be different. There won't be those usual edits, flashy transitions or animations. This one's raw, absolutely unfiltered. Just me sitting down and talking. Honestly, I did not plan this video. So let's get into it. Now, before I talk about the film, to make it clear, I watched the film on the 9th of September and it took me around these many days, around 4 to 5 days to absorb the intensity of the events shown in the film. Before I talk about the film, let me talk about the direct action day of 1946. Because that one event is the backbone of this entire film called The Bengal Files. And without it, nothing else which I say in this video would make sense. It was the August of 1946, exactly an year before India's independence. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the prime leader of the Muslim League. Now we all know who was Jinnah and what his motivations were. Not going into that side in much detail, otherwise it's gonna be a very long video. So in the August of 1946, he announces Direct Action Day. Now on paper it was meant to pressure the British and the Congress into conceding Pakistan, but behind the slogan of protest there was a plan that would unleash terror. Muhammad Ali Jinnah had warned that the Muslims would resort to direct action if their demands weren't met. In Bengal, his royal ally, Premier Hussain Shahid Suhrawardi, took it upon himself to deliver that action. Now, what Suhrawardi did was he announced a public holiday on the 16th of August in 1946, ensured that Muslim League supporters could gather in massive numbers, and reportedly ordered the police not to interfere. Government resources were diverted to protect rioters instead of the victims. Far from preventing violence, Suhrawardi's administration created the perfect conditions for it. It was not a spontaneous riot, it was a carefully orchestrated show of force. Now that the ground was set, the Direct Action Day, one of the darkest chapters of partition stories, began. On 16th of August 1946, after Friday prayers, mobs poured into the streets of Calcutta. Armed with knives, swords, and kerosene, they targeted Hindu neighborhoods. Homes were torched, shops were looted, and families slaughtered. Women were dragged into the open, and Hindu blood ran through the streets while the police, under Suhrawardi's watch, stood by. Now, his direct involvement into the Direct Action Day earned him the title of the Butcher of Bengal. And even today, the history still knows him by the title of Butcher of Bengal. Now this massacre, it continued for 2 whole days until Gopal Chandra Mukherjee or Gopal Patha organized Hindu youth into self-defense groups with sticks, knives and improvised weapons. They fought back against the mobs. Gopal Patha's defiance shifted the tide, preventing the complete annihilation of Calcutta's Hindu community and saving countless lives. Now, if you look at the British Indian figures, it's they say around 4,000 people died, but the people, those who survived the Direct Action Day, according to them, the numbers were much more higher. Probably tens of thousands. Now, that was a very short summary of what happened on Direct Action Day in 1946. The film Bengal Files brings those horrors to life, showing how the trauma of partition still echoes in our politics in 2025. Now, as I said, I watched the film around 6 days back, and honestly, it took me 6 days to absorb the intensity of the events that were shown in the film. Walking out of the theater, I saw people crying, people still frozen in their seats long after the end credits had rolled. The impact was that powerful. Now, here is my reaction. My first reaction, which I recorded just after walking out of the theater.
Okay, so I just walked out watching the film. Uh, okay, so let's comfy a bit. Okay, now let's talk about the film. In my opinion, it feels that whatever you read in the history textbooks or if any book that talks about it, if you have read about Direct Action Day and the atrocities that happen on that topic, nails it just nails on it on in the books, or if you just read it, you can't see those atrocities. But when you watch it, the atrocities they are just banging.
Now, having the time to process it, I realized something. Films like Bengal Files, Chhawa, Kashmir Files, Tanhaji, Swatantrata Veer Savarkar, they all do something our textbooks fail to do. They narrate the stories we should have grown up learning. Now, I studied in CBSE schools all my life, and not once I came across these characters or events. Even if something about these characters or events was mentioned, it was just a brush upon the topic. Nothing covered the atrocities, the horrific nature of these events. And that makes me wonder and ask, what happens to a society when it has to depend on cinema to know its own history instead of learning it from the curriculum? It's actually strange, but maybe it's good that we are actually talking upon these topics. Go and check out social media. The social media, take it X, Instagram, every platform is flooded with talks on these topics. And I appreciate these films because at least it starts the conversation on these topics. Now, I also find it strange that we Indians have a habit of brushing everything under the carpet. Everything which is uncomfortable to speak of, just brush it under the carpet. Never really talking about them, never really confronting them. To be very honest, I have never once heard about Direct Action Day. It was only a few years back through a podcast I was watching that I came to know about it. Now, as a film, Bengal Files doesn't try to sugarcoat anything. The storytelling is raw, the visuals are, to be very honest, disturbing. Performances are powerful enough to leave you shaken. It's not perfect cinema in terms of craft. At times, it feels more like a documentary than a feature film. But maybe that's what makes it so damn effective. It's not at all about entertainment and more about confrontation. You walk out thinking, questioning the system, the history, everything you just question about after watching these films. And in many cases, you just cry because the intensity of the events shown are so damn hard to absorb. You just cry. And maybe that's it what exactly set out to do.
Okay, so very quick walkout from the video. I was researching further on this topic about politics during the time of our independence during 1946, 1947, during that period. And I remembered that I studied about it during my grade 12th political science. Yeah, because we had this book called Politics in India Since Independence. And I have something to show you from that book in a paragraph. This is the book, Politics in India Since Independence. And there's this page which has the contents. Now, the very first chapter is challenges of nation building. So this is the very, very first chapter. Now, if I go to the first chapter, this is a page from the first chapter. Now focus on the time period which is highlighted in this text. Now this is the time period which talks about the Noakhali massacre, the Direct Action Day massacre. Just read it once. So see how the text just brushes past it. No mention of the sheer horror, no acknowledgement of the scale of suffering that happened. It almost feels like as if the pain was deliberately edited out of history. So, I thought if textbooks avoid it, maybe the newspapers of that time could give a clearer picture. I went through some of the old archives. Now, after this, you will see a montage of those old archives newspapers I have found. And trust me, shout out to the people who have maintained those archives so damn well. I'll link them below. And here's the montage of those articles, of those newspaper clippings which I found. Now, this is the real cost that words cannot capture. The human cost that often gets reduced to footnotes in books and newspapers. And that's why I feel films like Bengal Files do matter. They are hard hitting, unapologetic, and they force us to confront the realities we have been shielded from. The film is a punch in the gut, period.
Now, having I got the time to absorb the emotions and do a bit of research also on the topic about the film, even after watching the film. So, I came up with some questions which I think should be answered. Now, these are my thoughts which I am sharing about the film, and your thoughts may vary. Do let me know them in the comment section below, but here are my thoughts. The first thought that crossed my mind was what happens to a society when the truth of its past is hidden from it. Watching the massacre unfold on screen, I realized how generations like mine grew up completely unaware of this chapter. And ignorance isn't harmless. It shapes how we understand identity, politics, even morality. A society that forgets its wounds risks cutting itself on the same blade again. Another question that stayed with me was how do ordinary people turn into monsters? The film doesn't just show leaders giving orders, it shows neighbors turning on neighbors. Mobs hunting down families they might have known for years. It made me wonder, was it blind loyalty to leaders or something darker within human nature that surfaces in times of division? That's not just a question about 1946, it's a question about us even to this day. The third question was perhaps the hardest to answer. What does remembering actually achieve? Does it heal? Or does it only reopen wounds? Well, the film doesn't give an easy answer to it. But walking out of the theater, seeing people still in tears, frozen, I felt that remembering at least gives dignity to those who suffered. Silence erases them. Not the pain and the trauma, but those people, those stories. Remembrance restores them. And finally, the question that lingered in my mind long after I left the theaters was, why does it take cinema to tell us what our textbooks never did? Maybe because films and storytellers don't have the luxury of hiding behind footnotes and neutral language. They confront you with faces, screams, and blood. They force you to feel what paragraph in a book cannot. That in itself is powerful enough, but also deeply troubling. Shouldn't education or our schools, most importantly our textbooks, be the first place where truth lives and not the last place? That's what Bengal Files does. It doesn't just tell a story, it forces you to ask the questions we have been avoided for too long. And sometimes that's more powerful than any answer. Now, that was about the Bengal Files and what I loved about the film. Now, whether you want to watch Bengal Files or not in the theaters, it's totally your choice. But now you shouldn't watch Bengal Files if you don't care about India's real history. You love sugar-coated, romanticized stories of the very people who tore India's cultural fabric. You'd rather stay comfortable with the version of history that was edited, censored, and served in school textbooks. You believe the violence of partition is just the past and has no relevance to the present. You can't handle a film that forces you to confront brutality, pain, and truth head on. Because movies like this aren't just about entertainment, it's about remembrance. And remembrance isn't for the faint heart. Okay, so that's it for this video. So, if you like this format and want me to explore more such chapters of the Indian history, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the next one. And if you take my recommendation, just go and watch the Bengal Files. It's a must watch for someone who loves Indian history, loves untold chapters of the Indian history. Until then, this is me, Digant, signing off. Thanks for watching. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.